very much for the opportunity. I'll try and stick to the time. It's great to be here. I had a minor role in the project team that delivered this great building and facility. It was a challenging delivery and a highly collaborative one. And I think those are some of the themes that are coming across this morning, whether it's planning, development, or indeed in the delivery phase. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to give you an overview of what it is that we're doing. As Paul has said, and your Director General has said on several occasions, that the pace is glacial, but there are many, many challenges in front of us. One thing I would say is that as somebody who's been a practitioner, an architect by background, I see the huge stresses that have been on this industry, but of course right across the economy and society in general over the last couple of years. But I also see the beginnings of significant change in our industry. And I think a lot of the focus and the drive for that is coming through the construction sector group. There's some great initiatives coming through there, which we certainly feel as, I suppose, in the policy area, capable of really bringing significant change and giving confidence, I think, to some of the delivery mechanisms that have been spoken about today. I hope you'll forgive me for changing the title of my presentation. I'm reforming works procurement. Public procurement is way above my pay grade, so that's what the focus is on. So I just want to start with where all this began, if you like. So we've got the three principles that were objectives that were set out by government back in 2004. As many of you, or all of you, are taxpayers in the room, I don't think we necessarily disagree with those objectives. I think it's how we're implementing. And I just thought it's interesting, and Paul mentioned it earlier in his own summation, but there's three projects there, and one of them is long delivered, one of them is under delivery at the moment, and one is in the future. And there will be three different forms of contract in use on all of those, because there has been progressive change over a period of time and significant further changes to come. We've set our own objectives for the review. They're a little bit more nuanced, and I hope you'll see from the presentation where the stresses in our own review are. We set ourselves some fairly significant targets in terms of trying to make and bring about that change in mindset and delivery. And it's both sides. It's the industry, but it's on our side as well in terms of smoothing that delivery process. And I'll just step through those in a little bit more detail. What I do want to talk about, though, is also this modal shift in thinking that we're trying to bring about through the tools that we're developing and through the procurement. And by procurement, I don't mean just the tender. I mean from the beginning. So there's huge overlaps here with the work that our colleagues in the National Investment Office have done in the Public Spending Code, right the way through. So we're developing tools and capacity across the public sector that will enable this modal shift away from decision-making around simple capital cost calculations to total cost of ownership. And that includes things like carbon, obviously the running costs of the building as well. So the decisions, it changes the focus in terms of the decision-making away from that lowest cost to, if we pay more for X, Y, and Z, we may get greater durability. So that's a key part of the change that we're trying to bring about. And we're kind of emboldened and I suppose given confidence in this because we are in the process of developing standardized life cycle cost and assessment tools for public bodies so that, again, we can compare like with like right across the system. I think you all know the huge variety of projects that we deliver through the public sector. So, one size doesn't fit all, but we have a significant degree of a toolkit that we're trying to develop in this space. The other big game changer, and I won't dwell on it, I know they're going to be speaking about it later on, but building information modeling. It's the data handling capacity that we're particularly interested in with the building information and with BIM. And so we were wholeheartedly behind the establishment of the Build Digital project, and we're engaging with that team in terms of their setup, and I think that's going to be a growing level of engagement now that they're up and running, because we have certain things that we would like to see achieved through that, and the supports both from ourselves as public sector procurers, but also for the industry in general. But it's the data handling capacity in this that feeds into those tools that we're trying to develop that is critical and key to moving away from that capital cost piece to the total cost of ownership. So the key themes that we've pulled out of our own set of objectives are quality, cost, risk, and delivery, and collaboration is, I suppose, built into the middle of this. Today I'm not going to talk about what the public works contract is going to look like. What I'm trying to bring across here is how we're going to shift our procurement routes. The form of contract, I'm not suggesting it's not important. Of course it is. But if we get our procurement processes right, the contract is something that should just enable that delivery. It shouldn't be the thing that we all end up fighting and divided over. So the first area, just in terms of quality. So where do we start here? You know, public procurement allows for most economically advantageous tender. We have quality criteria that are used, but are they focused enough? Early stage decision making. What are the basis of our decisions? Are we looking at information that's up to date? What's the sense of the project? What do we know of risk? And I'll speak about that a bit more. But the key shift has to be from right the way through the project's development stages has to be on the total cost of ownership and delivering quality. We also obviously have to take into account our carbon footprint, and I'll speak a little bit about that. But most importantly, I think we need to make a move away from what we see is quite often a standardized approach to quality in procurement. On the consultancy side, we allow a weighting and encourage a weighting of up to 80% for quality. But has that necessarily meant that we get a quality service? It has improved somewhat, but our key issue is we have criteria that are not sufficiently focused on that service delivery and on the outcomes, to talk to Paul's point. And so price ends up being a determinant if we have standardized and copy and paste where it comes to quality criteria. So we need to certainly provide some assistance, and we need to develop those criteria. Cost. I've talked a little bit about the metrics that we're looking at, and I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. But it is, again, just to focus on the life cycle cost, the total cost of ownership of the facility, that we need to really up our game, and we're working on those tools. Risk. So we want to bring risk right to the front of the decision making. Risk and information go hand in hand. So the information that we have on projects, the kind of due diligence that we're doing on projects, clearly it has to be proportionate to the value of those projects. But I think that's an area that we could improve. Some of our colleagues across the system do this really, really well, but we need to up our game generally. We're trying to develop risk ratings, a complex process given the different sectors that we operate in. But I think work that we're endeavouring to progress, and we'll be talking initially with public sector colleagues around how do we do this. Because that risk rating, I think, is central to your contracting and your procurement strategies. For many of our projects, they're reasonably straightforward. Of course, there's risk with every construction project, but not perhaps on the scale of something like Metro or projects like that. And then something that the Capital Works Management Framework advocates anyway, but the residual risk is to be assigned to the entity best placed to manage it. Delivery. And this is where I think we're going to see some significant changes. We've spoken about modern methods of construction earlier on. I've been involved in one of the working groups that set up under the construction sector group and PJ Rudden's work in terms of looking at design for manufacture and assembly, which is an enabler of some of that MMC. The other side of this is going to be the procurement of early engagement of that necessary expertise. So I think we're going to see changes in the way that we put together our project teams, and that kind of rigid line between design and construction, that's going to get blurred. And we're going to be bringing people in at earlier points. Metrics, conscious of time. I don't want to speak too long on this, but one of the key shifts that we're making is to adopt the International Cost Management Standard. Doesn't sound terribly exciting for many in the room, but it sets a kind of a bedrock for consistent reporting in terms of cost, but also allows, with the latest revision, us to use life cycle costing and deploy it in a consistent fashion across the capital program. Digital, I spoke about that. BIM is a huge enabler, but we're also focusing on what can we do in terms of the procurement process to bring digitalization through. So one of the projects we're working on is digitizing the suitability assessment questionnaire, beloved of so many of you in the room. But we think that that is a significant game changer, brings a lot of efficiency to the process that I think we certainly need to try to bring ourselves. People, I think we spoke about this, resources are key. And I think the changes that we're going to see in the industry, we're going to see a much more diverse industry in terms of bringing in digital skills, attracting more women into the workforce, I think is key. And modern methods construction, offsite construction offers huge opportunities there. But on our side, we've invested in upskilling, if you like, and training on procurement. We've established the Commercial Skills Academy, which is now well functioning. It's run several courses. I think there's been about 500 of our colleagues on the public sector side through that training. And its ambition is to expand to other facets of public works delivery, but more broadly in procurement. And I think generally, there's a study done on the capacity of the public sector to deliver the NDP, and David spoke about that earlier on. That's vital in terms of upskilling and procurement skills, not just tendering, but procurement skills. I'm really going to fly through these because I just wanted to give you just an overview, and just also more importantly to show that there is progress and there is work being done in some of these areas. As Paul mentioned, I had intended to be here 2 years ago to speak about this. A lot of the work that we were progressing had to be put to one side whilst we grappled with some of the bigger challenges that we faced during the pandemic and inflation, and also in professional indemnity insurance. But the work stream that we're involved in are working across these various areas that you can see there. Our consultancy engagement, we set this out to be a really important part of our progression of change. So it's one that we're yet to commence engagement with professional bodies on, but we're setting out quite a different approach to how we're going to engage consultants in terms of information and the quality of that information that we're looking for. Output based is really a focus. We see collaboration as a key part of that, and again we'll be bringing BIM through the engagement process for consultants. Liability caps. So we did commit to this, and a position paper is going to be circulated imminently. It's ready to go. We hope to have it out next week with the intention to introduce those liability caps at the end of the year, by the end of the year. So that's an important step forward, both in public works but also in the consultancy contracts. Digitizing the SAQs, I spoke about that. Just an overview of where we hope to be. It's our first foray into direct procurement of digital solutions. So I'm sure we'll have a few twists and turns on the way. BIM. So we've been running some information sessions for our colleagues across the public sector with a view to preparing the ground. We see the key areas are asset management, so an understanding of what your asset management requirements are. That sets the standards that you want to flow forward into the procurement. The vital role of the information manager, new role in the project delivery team, and it's important the public sector engage in that. Our last one is coming up on IT systems and people, how we're going to recruit these people into the system. And we're hoping to launch a roadmap for the adoption of BIM before the end of the year. Price variation, I won't dwell on this, but this is a critical area. We haven't finished yet. We have temporary measures put in place that sit outside the contract. We're formalizing them through the contract, but there is further engagement on more fundamental changes in the price variation provisions, both in the works, but also in the consultancy contracts. Cost control and planning templates, one of the big changes there is going to be the incorporation of ICMS into those, and that will be happening early next year. So we're hoping to see that change brought through, and then that will flow into life cycle costing and life cycle assessment tools that we'll be developing with colleagues across the public sector and through engagement with yourselves. Performance management, another key area. I mean, if we're going to have collaboration, we must be monitoring performance. It's not a one-way street, so we've got to challenge one another in terms of the performance piece. So we need to have those metrics in place. We have the tools already there in the contracts, but we seem to lack the capacity to have a consistent approach to this. It's thorny, but I think it needs to be addressed. And dispute management. So if none of that works, we still need a process that will enable quick and efficient decisions. So that's another area of work that we're engaged in. I'm not going to come to any conclusions. I'm here to listen now to the rest of the presentations with respect to where the various panelists feel that the contract itself might go. But I think that gives you a flavour of the kind of broad work that we're involved in and where we're progressing on a number of fronts. So thank you very much.